those harmonies coming. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this. Now sing it to someone nearby. Sing it to someone. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. Find someone, look them in the eye and sing it to them. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. And this last time, let's all turn around and look at the folks on Zoom and sing to them. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. Thank you. Welcome.
Good morning. You know, there's some mornings that are just more special than others. Our printer this morning, none of the printers, we couldn't get any of the printers to work, and we use paper and printed things. But for some reason, only my computer will print from Google Docs, not from Microsoft Word. Beth's computer doesn't print from Google Docs. So anyway, we have paper, and it's great, and I don't have to use my laptop. So amen to that. Whew. So I'm feeling a little frantic right now because we've been running around this morning. But I would invite you all, as I'm going to get grounded here, to take a deep breath with me to get us grounded in this space. All right. Whether you're here in person, joining us online, or watching later on YouTube, welcome to First Parish in Concord. I'm Reverend Seth Carrier-Ladd, your interim senior minister. My pronouns are he, him. Joining me and leading our service this morning is Beth Norton, our director of music ministry. Beth's down there in front. She was leading us on the guitar. If you're online, please feel welcome to participate fully in the chat. If you're here in person and have questions about accessibility or the building, please see our ushers or any worship leader. Our COVID precautions are officially changing as of today. As of today, masks are optional throughout our building, including in this space. We continue to use enhanced ventilation and encourage masking to keep our communal spaces safe for everyone. I invite everyone present now to turn and wave again to our friends who are joining us online, as we've sung to them already. Hi, friends. However you are joining us this morning, thank you for coming. We are glad you are here. Before we begin, we have a few announcements. So the usual stuff. After the service, we have Worship Sharing Circle, which is a small group conversation about the service theme, which happens in the Brooks Room in person and on Zoom for those online. Coffee hour is also both. If you're here, you can get your coffee in the kitchen and mingle in the parish hall, and those on Zoom can just stay on after the service ends if you'd like to have virtual coffee hour. All right, we, as usual, have an omniscient, all-knowing standing committee rep here to answer any question that you might have. That person this morning is Liz Rust. So Liz can, feel free to hit her up, anything you got. And then a couple of specific things. The Covenant team, after the service at 11:30 in the parlor and on Zoom, is going to be presenting the final draft of our covenant. And so we are all going to be asked, you all are going to be asked, I'm not voting, you all are going to be asked to vote to approve this as the church's covenant at the June 11th congregational meeting. So please go to the parlor, or if you're on Zoom, go find the Zoom link in FP Weekly and attend the presentation, and so we can see what we're going to be voting on the 11th. Because hopefully we will, after the 11th, have a congregational covenant for us to use. Also, after the service today, if you want to prepare for the June 11th annual meeting in a different way, you could stay here in the sanctuary for a budget information session, also at 11:30, presented by the Standing Committee. Finally, the Immigration Justice Task Force invites you to hear Muzaffar Chishti, director of the Migration Policy Institute at NYU Law School, speak this Thursday, May 25th at 7 p.m. here in the sanctuary or on Zoom. If you're concerned about what's happening with immigration in this country, this event is not to be missed. Here ends our announcements. Our call to worship this morning is by Andrew Pakula. Come into this circle of community. Come into this sacred space. Be not tentative. Bring your whole self. Bring the joy that makes your heart sing. Bring your kindness and your compassion. Bring also your sorrow, your pain. Bring your brokenness and your disappointments. Spirit of love and mystery, help us to recognize the spark of the divine that resides within each of us. May we know the joy of wholeness. May we know the joy of being together. May Pakula's words guide us now into this sacred time and space. Come, let us worship together.
Each Sunday, when we gather together for worship, we begin by lighting a chalice, a flaming chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. Susan Ritchie says, when we light the chalice in worship, we illuminate a world we feel called upon to serve with love and a sense of justice. Please join me in reading together our chalice lighting response. O flame of our faith, open our hearts and fill our bodies and souls with persistent strength, enliven our spirits and engage us deeply in this life of ours, this sacred, essential moment now. Please join us and rise as you are able and join in singing hymn number 12, O Life That Maketh All Things New.
So I have a story to share with you all this morning. This is the wisdom story time about something that has actually happened in a Unitarian Universalist church, and actually in more than one Unitarian Universalist church. And it's the story, it starts with a young boy. And this boy, he lived in, the particulars are different from church to church, but I'm going to tell you one version. So in the original version that it's happened, that I heard about anyway, there was a young boy who lived with just his mom and his sister. And his mom and his sister, one of the things that they thought was super cool and fun to do was to put on fingernail polish. And he thought that was great. It was fun. They would do all sorts of different colors. And so when they were doing this, he was like, hey, I want to do that too. And so his mom said, great, that sounds fabulous. And so they would put on fingernail polish together as a family. And it was great. And this boy loved it. He thought it was great. He would do different colors, right? And paint his nails different colors and have so much fun and thought it was just the best thing in the world. So this was wonderful for him until, you might guess what the until is, until he went to school. And he showed up wearing fingernail polish on his nails, and he got teased and bullied for having his fingers painted. And he felt bad, he didn't feel, this doesn't feel good, nobody likes to get bullied. And so he came home and told his mom, right, and then they had a conversation, and she mentioned it to some of the people at church. And the next Sunday, many of the men and boys in the church showed up with their fingers entirely painted. And they brought fingernail polish with them so that people who didn't know about the story and what was happening could paint their fingernails too. And soon, I don't think all of them did it, but most of the men and the boys in the congregation that Sunday ended up with their fingers painted in support of this young child that was part of their community. And so in the original telling of the story from Reverend Joanna Fontaine Crawford, she heard from the mother that the mother went home, they went home after church, and her mother was talking about, they were talking about having at church that day, and the boy said, wow, why did all those people paint their nails today? I mean, it was awesome, I loved it, but what does that mean? And she says, well, it means that they're Unitarian Universalist. And her child said, well, great, I guess that means I'm a Unitarian Universalist too. So what I wanted to lift up from the story today, right, is that there's lots of things we could take away. But one of our theme today is interdependence. And we often think of interdependence as depending on each other for things we need, but we tend to define those things as like food or getting tasks done. But we also need each other for support and care and being lifted up. And that's part of what it means to be an interdependent community, is to be there for each other and to support and lift each other up. Because, right, that didn't have to happen. It could just been that mom would have said, hey, don't worry about what other people think, it only matters what you think. And maybe she did say that, right? That's part of what parents do when kids are being teased for things where they do something different than cultural norms. But if that is all that had happened, that's a huge difference, right, between showing up on a Sunday morning and seeing a community there supporting you. And so that's what I hope we do as Unitarian Universalists, as First Parish in Concord, as people who care about each other in the world. That we're not just individuals, that we're not just families, that we're a community who comes together to care for one another. All right, will our RE guides please come forward? Today, Reverend Amy Friedman has gone with our Crossing Paths groups to the Providence Zen Center. Little RE for our youngest children has already begun in the parlor. For young people in first grade and older, please follow our RE guides outdoors for religious exploration. And let's sing them out. That's you, friend. The myth of independence and individualism is a powerful myth in our culture, both in our country and in Unitarian Universalism. We learn it. We learn you pull yourself up by your bootstraps. We learn that you find the resources within to get through. We compete, sometimes as teams, but even then, often the glory is individual. We learn that that is where we should try and be living from far too often. But the thing is that it's a myth. It's a story that we tell ourselves. It's a story that we tell about how we are and what it means to be in the world. And when reality is that we were all interdependent on each other. Now, if you think about this, like it's easy, right? If you're going about your day, you don't realize all the ways in which we depend on other people. But if our electrical grid were to go out, for example, I would be in a lot of trouble. I don't know about you. Because I don't have a garden. I don't know how to grow food. There's no way I wouldn't be able to provide for myself. And when we go to the grocery store, right, we don't think about all of the other people we're depending on to make sure that we're able to eat. We just go to the store and we think, oh, I made this meal, I cooked it, I'm independent, right? Except we're not. We're not independent. Someone else, if there's 10 ingredients, those ingredients all came from somewhere. Someone grew them or raised them, all sorts of things, right? We have this idea that we're doing things by ourselves, and we don't see the ways in which we are dependent and interdependent on other people. Let's take a more concrete example from the present. A minister writing and preaching a sermon on Sunday morning. It looks like a pretty solitary act, right? I'm up here by myself. There's no one else here. It's done by one person. I wrote it by myself. There wasn't anybody there writing for me. Now hold on to this image, right? Because let's talk about the reality. Even though I write by myself, the sermon is written by many people. We talk about service themes together as a staff, and different people suggest ideas or perspectives every week. I and other ministers read books and articles, poetry and newspapers, sacred texts, interacting with and being informed by the ideas of people I don't know and haven't met. I bring with me to the table the wisdom and experience of many of my colleagues, whether they be professors from my homiletics class in seminary, my internship supervisors from Oklahoma, or peers and colleagues who have shared insights at workshops and retreats. And of course, I bring all of my life experience, wisdom, and insight that I have gleaned from all who I have crossed my path. My parents, my siblings, my spouse, my grandparents, my friends, my kids and their wisdom, Unitarian Universalist ministers and theologians who came before, and of course, all of you. And so while you may just see one minister up here preaching on Sunday mornings, when you do, you should think of this. Because this is the reality of what goes into a sermon. It appears solitary, but there are actually many voices present every Sunday. Frankly, if all of these other voices weren't part of the process, my sermons wouldn't be very good. One voice, one perspective alone is so limited. I miss things. There's no way for me or any other minister to have all the different perspectives. We are I, and we are located where we are, right? I am a straight, cisgendered white male, and that is a limiting perspective. If that's the only perspective I ever took when I was crafting my sermons, I don't think you all would like them very much. They get better. I'm not saying they're great, but I know that they get better, right? They are made better by the voices, the perspectives of other people who have different wisdom and different understanding than I do. And this is true of our theological and our spiritual learning more broadly as a religious community. We can fall under the illusion sometimes that our spiritual faith and religious journeys are individual ones, right? We like that in Unitarian Universalism. I can choose to believe what I want in many ways, right? You can't believe you're a Satanist or other things. There's boundaries. But we offer so much freedom. And that's great. Freedom is one of the best things about Unitarian Universalism. It's really wonderful, the freedom that we offer. But it's not freedom to do anything, and it doesn't mean that we're alone in our choices. The collaborative process is one of the main reasons we come together in religious community. And so just like my writing sermons, we could go on our religious journey alone in theory if we wanted, but why? It almost certainly wouldn't be as good, as meaningful, or as powerful as when we do it together. We need those kids' voices too. Absolutely. And our forebears recognized this. The Cambridge platform came out in 1648. It was what separated the churches that were planted here from the Church of England. And it said, we are independent. You cannot tell us what to do. Anybody recognize that thread? But what we often forget to carry forward was that there was also accountability between the churches written into the Cambridge platform. It says explicitly that the churches are to hold each other accountable and to step in and offer advice and intercede if they see the other communities going astray. It is not that they were independent individuals. It was that there's both. We can be both independent and interdependent. As United Church of Christ minister Reverend Lillian Daniel wrote in her book, Spiritual but Not Religious, there is nothing challenging about having deep thoughts all by oneself. What is interesting is doing this work in community, where other people might call you on stuff, or heaven forbid, disagree with you. Where life with God gets rich and provocative is when you dig deeply into a tradition that you did not invent all for yourself. Now, the interdependent nature of religious community and of life in general may not be news to some of you, or perhaps even to many of you, but it's really important for us to remember and think about. In our society and culture that too often makes an idol out of individualism, and in a faith tradition that places such a strong emphasis on our own point of view, we need to remind ourselves from time to time that we come together as a religious community because we do need each other. We need each other to do the social justice work, we need each other when we need support, and we need each other on our journeys to help enliven them and deepen them and make them richer with different perspectives. Unitarian Universalist minister Mark Morrison Reed writes, "The central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind each to all. There is a connectedness, a relationship discovered amidst the particulars of our own lives and the lives of others. Once felt, it inspires us to act for justice. It is the church that assures us that we are not struggling for justice on our own, but as members of a larger community. The religious community is essential, for alone our vision is too narrow to see all that must be seen, and our strength is too limited to do all that must be done. Together," he concludes, "our vision widens and our strength is renewed." Church is indeed, among other things, about our shared struggle for justice, a struggle grounded in the religious experience. Our shared beliefs and practices, our time spent together thinking and reflecting, it helps us broaden our vision. It is the connectedness, though, the interdependence, the relationships that I want to lift up for us today. I'm going to do so now in a story. This is another true story about a gentleman named Charles Plum, a U.S. Naval Academy graduate who was a jet fighter pilot in Vietnam. After 75 combat missions, his plane was destroyed by a surface-to-air missile. Plum ejected and parachuted into enemy hands, and he was captured and spent 6 years in a prison. He survived that ordeal and now lectures about lessons learned from the experience, and one of those lessons includes the following. One day, this is his story, one day my wife and I were sitting in a restaurant, and a man at another table who had been eyeing me for several minutes came up and said, "You are Captain Plum. You flew jet fighters in Vietnam from the aircraft carrier Kitty Hawk. You were shot down. You parachuted into enemy hands and spent 6 years as a prisoner of war." "How in the world do you know that?" he asked. "I packed your parachute," the man replied. I was speechless. I staggered to my feet and held out a grateful hand of thanks. This guy came up with just the proper words. He grabbed my hand, he pumped my arm, and said, "I guess it worked." I assured him it sure did. If your chute hadn't worked, I wouldn't be here today. Then I asked him a question. "Do you keep track of all the parachutes you pack?" "No," he responded. "It's enough gratification for me just to know that I've served." Plum continues, "I couldn't sleep that night thinking about that man. I kept wondering what he might have looked like in a Navy uniform, a Dixie cup hat, a bib in the back, and bell-bottom trousers. I wondered how many times I must have passed him on the Kitty Hawk. I wondered how many times I might have seen him and not even said, 'Good morning, how are you?' or anything, because you see, I was a fighter pilot, and he was just a sailor. How many hours did that sailor spend on that long wooden table in the bowel of the ship, carefully weaving the shrouds and folding the silks of each chute, holding in his hands each time the fate of someone he didn't know?" The story ends there, but the impact lingers. Now, at his speaking engagement, Plum asks his audience, "Who's packing your parachute?" And so I ask you now, on a day-to-day basis in your life, who packs your parachute? This is a really important thing for us to be thinking about because of this myth, this illusion of independence and individualism. We are a community. We are interconnected. And this is central to what it means to be Unitarian Universalism. The interdependent web of existence is in our 7 principles, and as some of you are hopefully aware, we're making some proposed changes to those that we're going to talk about at General Assembly this year, including this language about interdependence as a core value. We honor the interdependent web of all existence. We covenant to cherish Earth and all beings by creating and nurturing relationships of care and respect. With humility and reverence, we acknowledge our place in the great web of life, and we work to repair harm and damaged relationships. And so I ask of you and of us this morning to think about what it means to be an interdependent community. What does that call you to do? If we're not just here as individuals trying to figure out our own religious beliefs, if there's more than that, if it's not just about us as individuals, if it's about us together, does that call you to do anything different than you are doing now? At the risk of offering too many stories and metaphors in one sermon, I'm going to offer you one more. Our staff, the staff of the church, was really fortunate to go to a conference for large UU churches this fall, where we heard from Paula Cole-Jones, who shared about the idea of being a community of communities. This really spoke to me of the experience here. Because of being a large church and a larger community, there are lots of smaller communities that gather together. The choir, the Immigration Justice Task Force, the Pastoral Associates, so many groups, right? There's so many smaller communities within this community. And what we need to remember, especially as a larger congregation, is that we are also a community of communities, and that there is a whole, and that it does matter, and that we are all connected, and that one group can't exist without the rest. Friends, as we go about the business that we are in of creating and living the religious community we dream of into being, may we find not only independence and individualism, but also interdependence, community, and connection. May we find not only our own truth, but may we also hear many truths that enrich our own. And may you find interdependence and a richness of depth and meaning that transforms your life and transforms the world. Amen.
Good morning. Hi, I'm Liz Rust. I'm chair of the Standing Committee, and I'm here with Jan Power, the chair of the Community Life...
Congregational Life.
Thank you. I knew that. Congregational Life Committee. So we're here to do the First Parish Volunteer Appreciation. And this whole service, I think, is about First Parish celebration of us and the community that we share together. First Parish in Concord depends on us, as we know, our congregants and our volunteers. Depends on us to operate, depends on us to exist, by the people, of the people, just like the Democracy Festival yesterday. Whoever went, that was awesome. This is our congregation, and so apparent when we recognize and lift up the work of the volunteers who freely give their time and labor for our community. I'm here as chair of the Standing Committee, our governing board, with Jan, to honor all those folks who volunteer for First Parish in Concord. So we're going to call out the different groups, and if you participated with one of those, please raise your hand or write in the Zoom chat which group or activity you volunteer for.
Okay. Starting with those who attend to the business of the congregation and its buildings with their eyes on the past, present, and future of this church. We have those who are involved in governance and operations, such as the Standing Committee. Raise your hand if you're involved. The Nominating Committee, Ministerial Transition Team, Weekly Office Volunteers, the Annual Pledge Campaign Stewards and Fundraisers, and the Annual Meeting Volunteers, and website updating, which is a very specific one. Stoney, are you here?
And how we are with one another, the Covenant Team, the Congregational Life Committee, and the Commission on Institutional Change. Now, I see that everyone's doing their hand up and down, so that's just because it's a lot of holding of the hand, right? So, but we'll do all the hands together at the end.
Yeah.
And keeping us connected to the UUA and our history, the General Assembly delegates, and the Partner Congregation Committee.
Helping with maintenance and operations of our facilities, we have the COVID team. We have carpentry and other maintenance volunteers. We have Greening the Campus Committee and Herb Garden volunteers, as well as the Wright Tavern Legacy Trust. We also have the trustees of parish donations and the Women's Parish Association.
And for worship participation and assistance, the choirs. There we are. Look at you all. Excellent. The Flower Committee, ushers, welcome table attendees, worship sharing circle leaders, Zoom chat hosts, a Concord singing group, help with acoustics.
And in religious exploration and childcare, we have religious exploration guides and mentors, 45 of them this year. Probably most of them are not here right now, but we have some, yes. And early birds, people who staff the parlor for young children to play. Go ahead.
Interest in social groups, Ferry Beach Planning Committee, men's retreat planners, women's retreat planners, lots of planners.
I'll do that.
Okay, you do that.
Oops, sorry.
I did the wrong spot.
Why isn't this fixed to the thing? For pastoral support, we have the By Your Side Singers. We have the Holden Fund panel. We have the Pastoral Care Lay Ministers. We have the Shawl Ministry and the Chef Pool and the support group facilitators and the First Tuesday group facilitators.
And our social action groups, we have the Advocates for Women's Empowerment, the Diversity Committee, the Environmental Leadership Team, the Funderburg Scholars, the Immigration Justice Task Force, the Microfinance Group, the Racial Justice Action Group, and Reclaim Our Democracy. We also recognize all the people who help make First Parish a vibrant place. These are affinity groups that enhance our connection to each other while deepening our own interests. For all those who participates in any other group here, please also raise your hand. So here it is, the grand finale. Everyone who raised their hands, up. There we go.
All right.
Yay, very good, very good. Thank you, everyone, for your service. Oh, am I supposed to?
Just a little bit.
Go ahead, you want to do that?
I just want to point out, too, that we have 40 or 50 more people on Zoom who are also participating. So we have a lot of you involved. In the wake of COVID's disruption, churches everywhere are recalibrating. As we do that, it's vital that we keep connecting and showing up for one another. So we are deeply grateful to our staff, who are our partners in keeping this community strong. And we are grateful for those of you who have shown up and have shared your time and talents to help keep First Parish in Concord a thriving congregation. Thank you.
prayerful section of the service where people can share joys and sorrows. We have two pastoral milestones this morning. First, Vincent Giuliano died in hospice on May 9th. Vincent was the firstborn son of the late Louis Mitchell and stepson of Peter Mitchell. Vincent is survived by his brother Mark Giuliano and half-brothers Graham Mitchell and Andrew Mitchell, who all grew up in the church. The second is that Darian Smith's father, Dr. R. Vance Hall, died peacefully at home in Seattle the morning of Saturday, May 20th. Darian and her family have been so grateful for your words of support as they've been with him in these last few days. Is there anyone else who is on your heart and in your mind right now? If so, I invite you to call their names aloud or type them into the chat. As we enter now into our time of prayer and meditation, I invite you to get settled into your space. Maybe you close your eyes. Maybe you ground yourself by putting both feet firmly on the ground. Maybe you take a deep breath in and out. And now let us reflect together on these words adapted from Maureen Killerin. She wrote, "Here in this space, we are gathered, called by our sense of urgency, our duty, or the longing for community, called to be together on this day. Here in this space, we are gathered, called to hold ourselves accountable to our values, to remind ourselves of those hopes and dreams and possibilities for which sometimes in the rough and tumble world, it can be hard to hold on to belief. Here in this space, we are gathered, called to do our part in weaving a web of human community. Here in this space, some of us have come in pain. To those who are dealing with issues of health, to those dealing with a loss, to those dealing with disconnection and separation, we pray, we wish for courage and healing. We hold all the concerns, named and unnamed, that are gathered in this room and online this day. And in the complexities of community, it is right that in this space, some have come with joy bubbling in their heart. May we rejoice together, remembering the wisdom that says joys are multiplied when shared. May we remember gratitude for warmth, thankfulness for sunshine, appreciation for the simple tastes of whatever food our lives and bodies let us choose. Here in this space, we are called to weave the web of human community. As we enter now into a time of silent reflection, may we hold love in our hearts, and may our shared silence be a blessing on this community, as well as extending outward to grace the wider world.
The mission of First Parish is to build community, deepen spiritually, and work for justice. At this time in our service, we offer reflection on the ways we can support and hold beloved community for the good of the whole, both within and beyond these walls. Sometimes this requires sacrifice. Sometimes it requires courage, and always it requires love. If you're paying attention to the news, you are hearing a lot about the situation at the Mexican border. For decades now, we have tolerated haphazard policies that punish, violate freedoms, and assume people are criminals when in fact, most are honestly seeking asylum. We have allowed families to be separated, jailed, and treated worse than cattle with dangerous overcrowding and chronic underfunding. As Pablo de Jesus, Executive Director of UUAs for Social Justice writes, the current meta-narrative on immigration seems designed to scare Americans with notions of crisis beyond our control and being overrun, rather than sober facts about systematic dysfunction that is well within our capacity to remedy. All we need to do is place human dignity and welcome at the center of our approach, and place a firm and placable love at the heart of our policies. It benefits all of us to learn the facts of what is happening. Our own Immigration Justice Task Force has worked hard to provide resources to learn more. The May 25th event you heard about in the announcement presents yet another opportunity. A large part of the authoritarian agenda is to label and exclude the other, and to blame as many evils as people will accept on them. As people of faith, this is not our way. Our way is to open and the circle wider, to care for the lost, the hungry, and all those in need. To honor the dignity and worth of each and all, no matter where they are from. As Pablo de Jesus says, all we need to do is place human dignity and welcome at the center of our approach, and place a firm and placable love at the heart of our policies. May we endeavor to place this implacable love at the heart of all we say and do.
This month, we are sharing our plate collection with the Concord Community Chest's When in Need Fund. The Concord Community Chest is working in collaboration with Making Opportunities Count, or MOC, the organization responsible for the local Concord shelter for women and children. Today's collection will be shared with the Concord Community Chest's When in Need Fund to provide car seats for children and infants staying in the shelter. This fund is specifically set up to manage immediate needs, and car seats are a priority right now. We thank you for your generous gifts this morning as we seek to widen the circle of love and care and work together for collective liberation. Our offering will now be received. now in singing our closing hymn, Just As Long As I Have Breath. It's number 6 in your gray hymnal. Please rise and sing.
time. There we go, just in time. I finished my nails. So friends, we've had a service about this community, about community more broadly, about interdependence, about that celebrates and appreciates all that you all contribute to this community. And my invitation to you now in this moment is to come up once the postlude is done and paint a nail or two or as many as you want. There's 4 bottles different up here with different colors, as a reminder to you of the interdependence of this community and what it means. Now, I realize it might be uncomfortable for some of you, either because of gender identity stuff or how we treat gender in our country, or maybe you've got some really expensive nail polish already on. So you all make your own choice, but I do invite you to do it as a reminder of what this community means and of how important it is to hold on to how much we depend and interdepend on each other. And if you do it and somebody asks you about why you have 1 or more nails painted a funky color, I invite you to share with them about First Parish in Concord and tell them about why it's such an important part of your life. Let us now say our benediction together. Go out into the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Honor all beings.